Mustafa Barghouti is a Palestinian physician, an activist, a politician. He's been a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council since 2006, also a member of the PLO Central Council. Mr. Barghouti, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, I've known you a long time. You may not remember me, but with Canadian TV, I used to interview you often in the 90s and after. Am I mistaken, or when you were a doctor, you know, I used to say, are you going to get involved with the Palestinian Authority? And you used to say, no, I'm a doctor, I'm not a politician. What happened?
I had to become a politician because I couldn't change the health policies and health system without changing the political system.
And did you change it?
I think we're managing to have a greater influence, yes. And, you know, I am now convinced that we represent a very important third line in Palestine, a democratic third alternative, which is not affiliated neither to Fatah or Hamas. And I think we have a very important future because the Palestinian people want to see this third democratic alternative, the voice of what I call sometimes the silent majority.
So tell me about what is that third line and what does it represent for the silent majority of Palestinians who are not being, to a large degree, not being heard right now?
It means many things. We founded a movement called the Palestinian National Initiative with people like Haidar Abdel-Shafi and Dr. Edward Said and hundreds of other Palestinian intellectuals and political leaders. And it has become the third force probably in Palestine. And we are calling for a combination of three things: struggle to achieve freedom and ending occupation and the system of apartheid that Israel is practicing against us. But also we're calling for internal democracy and the right of the people to democratically elect their leaders, and the separation of powers, the executive, judiciary, and legislative powers. And all the aspects of true democracy. But we don't mean only political democracy. We also speak about social democracy. And that's why a third very important component of what we do is the issue of social justice, women's rights, rights of people with disability, eliminating poverty, etc., etc. We've been calling for nonviolent resistance, and we've been leading nonviolent resistance for a very long time. And we've become probably the most unifying power in Palestine, calling for national unity of all Palestinians and the creation of a unified leadership on the basis of democratic participation.
Unified, non-violent. Where does that leave you with Hamas in Gaza?
We're in dialogue with them, and I think we managed to convince them with the value and power of nonviolence, and they did stick to it for a very good period of time, till Israel continued, of course, their attacks with severe violence. And of course, you see what's happening now. But we are in dialogue with Fatah, with Hamas, with everybody, because we believe that what we need is really national unity and a unified political program and a unified political struggle.
Definitely something unified, because with the Palestinian Authority split now since 2006 with the elections in Gaza, and Hamas took over in 2007. I mean, there's been basic paralysis of Palestinian leadership. Would you agree?
Totally. And the only solution to that is free democratic elections. And I think we've been calling for democratic elections, and we were about to have them in 2021. And we even met in Cairo, all the Palestinian political groups, 14 of them. We agreed on a whole scenario of conducting elections. We even agreed about how we can run elections even in Jerusalem, which Israel is obstructing, as an act of nonviolent resistance. But unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority and President Abbas canceled the elections. And it was clear that Israel is adamantly against elections. And the United States of America, the great democratic country, was not also supporting having democratic free elections in Palestine. And we lost an opportunity. We would not be in this situation had we have elections then, because elections would have produced a unified Palestinian Legislative Council and eventually new presidential elections. And we would have ended this situation of one-party rule in Gaza and one-party rule in West Bank. Especially that all the results of all the polls at the time showed that no single party, neither Fatah nor Hamas, can have absolute majority, which meant we would have had a truly democratic, pluralistic system. And that's exactly what I think Palestinians need. And now when I hear the Americans and Israelis speak about a new leadership in Gaza, I think this is a big humiliation to the Palestinian people and a big insult, because it's not Israel who should decide who would lead us. We need, the only way is to ensure that Gaza is not separate from the West Bank. And what we need is really a democratically elected leadership that would lead the way to having a true independent Palestinian state or a one democratic state.
How can you resolve the fact that Hamas is dedicated to eliminating Israel, has carried out these atrocious acts of violence inside Israel? How do you surely you must feel that they have to be removed?
Look, I don't agree or accept the killing of any civilian, whether Israeli or Palestinian, but at this very moment, the people who are being slaughtered are the Palestinian civilians. More than 9,100 of them so far, and the number keeps increasing. Every 5 minutes, we're losing a Palestinian. Every 10 minutes, we lose a Palestinian child. And the Israeli airstrikes continue. You cannot condemn the killing of Israeli civilians without condemning the killing of Palestinian civilians. But Hamas is ready to accept two-state solution. If Israel is, Hamas is ready for two-state solution if Israel is ready to accept a Palestinian state in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. I think they've just repeated that by their own leader. And that was the program of the National Unity Government, which I mediated in 2007, which was headed by the head of Hamas, and the deputy was the representative of Fatah. And I was the only spokesperson of that government, which everybody besieged till it collapsed after 86 days. I think that all Palestinians would accept two-state solution, but the one side that does not accept that is Israel. And the one side that blocked all possibilities of negotiations is Netanyahu. And the man who came to power under one slogan, to kill Oslo process and to kill the two-state solution and to kill the potential for any Palestinian state, was Benjamin Netanyahu. And he's the one who blocked all negotiations with any Palestinian since 2014. So in reality, you cannot accuse Palestinians of not accepting two-state solution when Israel has been the power that has blocked that road and is killing the two-state solution with all the settlements it is expanding in the West Bank.
I'm nodding my head because I agree with you, not because I hear you, but because I believe that Netanyahu did indeed take every opportunity he could to kill the peace process, even though when he came to power after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, he said that he couldn't and wouldn't. But in fact, at every step, he has opposed a two-state solution. What happened, and I hate to ask you because you're not Israeli, but you're a neighbor and you understand your partners in the so-called Oslo Accords. What happened? You speak about the silent majority of Palestinians. What do you think happened to the silent majority of Israelis between the signing of the Oslo Accords and today, when all they want really is revenge and removal of Hamas as a threat in Gaza? Where is the silent majority that supported peace?
Two things happened to that majority. They shifted to the extreme right. And that is because they felt they can keep occupation and keep exploiting our land and our water and our workers at no cost.
But most Israelis don't want it anyway. But most Israelis don't want it. I mean, really, most Israelis don't want to do their army service in the West Bank, and they don't. I mean, most Israelis don't go to the West Bank. Most Israelis, the settler factions, yes, but mainstream Israelis were willing to have a two-state solution.
Yeah, but the majority of them support the extreme right-wing parties. That's why they are in power. And there is another important development one should not forget about, which is that because Oslo Agreement included a very big flaw, and that is, of course, the the fault not only of the Israelis and Americans, but also of the Palestinian leadership, because it allowed the continuation of Israeli settlement expansion. The number of illegal settlers grew from 121,000 in 1993, when Oslo Agreement was signed, to more than 750,000 today. These settlers became a huge political power. Now they have 14 members in the Israeli Knesset out of 120. And some of them are holding very vital positions, like Smotrich, who is the Minister of Finance, and also he's the Minister of the West Bank. Ben-Gvir is in charge of internal security. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who are both settlers, have been advocating the elimination of any Palestinian right on the land of historic Palestine. And both of them have said, Smotrich said, that he will fill the West Bank with settlers and settlements so that Palestinians would lose any hope of a state of their own. And eventually, we will have one of three options: either to immigrate, which is ethnic cleansing, or accept a life of subjugation to Israelis, which is apartheid, or die, which is genocide, that they are conducting now in Gaza. So it's not just the responsibility of these extreme people in Israeli government, but also it is the responsibility of the so-called moderates in Israel, and they are not moderates in my opinion, like Lapid and Gantz and the Labour Party and others who voted for the state national law of Israel in the Israeli Knesset, which said that Eretz Israel, meaning the land of historic Palestine, is a place where the right of self-determination is exclusive for Jewish people. So the public in Israel shifted to the extreme right. And that's why I don't mean by that only the Likud, but all these parties, even the religious parties who used to be sort of moderate in their approach, changed and they radicalized. And that's what you see, the result of that, what we see today.
How do you bring back that portion of Israeli society that probably would support a two-state solution? I mean, how is there, while the bombs are falling in Gaza, and by the way, while Israelis are kidnapped and children are held by Hamas, is there some hope left that something positive comes from this?
Two things are happening. First of all, I think everybody now remembers that the issue of Palestine is not only about occupation, but also about the fact that we have been subjected to a settler colonial system. And that settler colonial system is trying to finish its job by ethnically cleansing Gaza completely. They cannot do it up till now because Egypt is standing up to them and because Palestinians refuse to leave and to become refugees again. But that's their plan: ethnic cleansing of Gaza and then gradual ethnic cleansing of the West Bank. They've already started ethnic cleansing of Area C. 13 Palestinian communities have already been evicted by the terror of Israeli illegal settlers. So that's their plan. But maybe with all the horrors that are happening and all these victims on both sides, maybe this will change the formula in the sense of telling the Israeli public that there is a cost of occupation. There is a cost of the system of apartheid. There is a cost of continuation with these dreams of ethnically cleansing another people. There is a price they are paying. Maybe this will bring many people to the rational thinking that
it doesn't, because even Rabin, I don't think Rabin did the peace process out of charity. I think that he said over and over again, if we don't do this now, 30 years ago, almost, if we don't do this now, Israel will face more extremism and more violence. And it will threaten the state of Israel. The Oslo peace accords were put forward really as a life ring to both sides, don't you think?
Right, and many Israeli leaders, including, I think, Ehud Barak and Olmert, said that Israel will become an apartheid state if there is no Palestinian state. That's for sure. But the reality is, today, Israel is trying to solve the demographic problem, which is that our numbers now on the land of historic Palestine as Palestinians is equal, if not a little bit larger than the number of Israeli Jewish people, regardless of the fact that 7 million of us are refugees in other countries. So that put Israel in front of a very big challenge. Either two-state solution immediately, which means removing the settlements from the West Bank, or accept us as equal human beings in one democratic state. The Israeli fascists now in the government are trying to solve that formula in a different way by ethnically cleansing Palestinians in Gaza and maybe later in the West Bank.
What is going on in the West Bank? I appreciate your time, and I know we're drawing to a close here, but as we speak, I mean, a lot of people don't realize what's going on in the West Bank. We see what's happening in Gaza, but there's a lot of settler movement and violence taking place in the West Bank right now.
And I want the public to understand that what happened in Gaza was a result of what was happening in the West Bank in the first place. History did not start on the 7th of October. Before that, Israeli army and settlers have killed 248 Palestinians in the West Bank, including 40 children. They attacked Islamic and Christian holy places. They spit at Christian clerics and worshippers. They tried to change the nature of the most holy place for Muslims, which is the Aqsa Mosque. And Netanyahu spread the word everywhere that he's going to normalize with Saudi Arabia and all Arab countries and liquidate the Palestinian issue. And he had the guts 2 weeks before the war started in Gaza to stand up in the United Nations General Assembly and show the map of Israel that included the annexation of all the West Bank and all of Gaza Strip and all of the Golan Heights, openly declaring that in front of the whole world community. Of course, that led to a reaction which you see today. But what they are doing now in the West Bank is even horrible. They already killed additional 132 Palestinians, including 8 that were killed directly by Israeli illegal settlers. And they are now putting the whole West Bank into they divided it into clusters of ghettos, 224 ghettos separated from each other by 650 military checkpoints, many of which are closed. They're attacking us everywhere, viciously, harassment everywhere. They already arrested 1,750 more Palestinians, making the number of prisoners in Israeli jails 7,000, including 200 children and more than 60 women. And more than 2,000 are under the so-called administrative detention, which means they are in jail without knowing why, without charges, without due legal process. This was the reason why we had what we have in Gaza, and the two places are totally connected. You cannot separate one from the other.
Then how do you assess Israel's main goal now, its military goal stated by the IDF and empowered by the Israeli cabinet to remove Hamas from the leadership of Gaza, to replace Hamas? Is there any of that realistic?
No, and they cannot eradicate Hamas because Hamas is not an army or an organization only. Hamas is an idea. And even if they reoccupy Gaza completely, this will not make Hamas disappear. And they left Gaza mainly because of the Palestinian resistance in the first place. And they didn't really withdraw from Gaza, they just redeployed. And today they are trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza. This is their real goal. And if they fail, that means their whole operation has failed. And they will come back to the same thing I told you about, either two-state solution or one democratic state where we can coexist and live together in equality. There is no alternative to that, because we the Palestinians, and I speak on behalf of everybody here, we will never accept to be slaves of a system of occupation or apartheid, or accept to become refugees again.
Mustafa Barghouti, good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.